Hey Yoginis, Ashley Josephine here, and today I'm really excited. I finally decided that we are going to work on handstands. Now before you pause this video and turn it off and say, I can't do that, this isn't for me, not today, I'll see you again next week, just stay with me here, and if you don't get into a handstand, that's perfectly okay. In fact, if you've never practiced a handstand before, or the last time you were doing handstands was when you were 6 years old, then I wouldn't expect you to get into a handstand today. But I'm going to give you the foundations for building a handstand practice, and I'll preface this by saying that it has taken me about 6 years in my yoga practice to actually get to the point where I can hold a solid handstand. And the other thing is that our lives change every single day, and our body responds to how our life is. So if we're really stressed out, or if we're feeling out of balance, we're just not feeling that strong, that's going to be reflected in our handstand practice. So although yes, I can practice handstands and I can hold them, some days I'm better than others. Some days it's just not happening, other days it's great and I can hold it for 30 seconds. So be present with where you're at today in your practice. If all you can do is the warm-up exercises, then that's all you can do. Be proud of yourself that you're building the strength that you need to have a handstand practice. And know that if you practice these things that I'm going to show you and you remember the foundations, you're going to be building strength and you're going to be building the ability over time, when practiced consistently, to eventually hold a handstand. And you can feel so proud of yourself. It's really exhilarating. Going upside down is so much fun. And so we're going to practice safety, we're going to practice strength, and we're going to see if we can get up into a handstand. So one thing I would suggest is that it could be nice to practice up against a wall, one with no pictures or anything like that if possible, so that you won't feel like you're falling over backwards. And other than that, let's get started. So we're going to start with two poses, and let me let my dog out because she's scratching in the background. Alright, so we're going to start with two poses, and it's actually handstand in and of itself. We'll start with plank. So you've done planks with me before in my videos, and if you need to do it on your knees, that's totally okay. That's where you start. But I want to show you how plank is actually very much like a handstand. So we start with our hands underneath our shoulders, and our shoulders are right underneath our wrists. Same thing is happening in a handstand, we're just inverting. You can have your knees on the ground if you'd like, that's fine. Or you can come up to a full plank. Your hips are in line with your shoulders so that your body is one straight line. Now with your hands pressing down into the ground, I want you to feel hollowing out in your armpits, almost like your armpits were a nutcracker and you have a walnut underneath them. So your biceps are actually going to pull in towards each other, and your forearms are going to pull away from each other. So you've got this really, really strong feeling of support in your hands. Most of the weight is in your palms, and you might even be able to pick up your fingers, maybe just the tips. So you're feeling this hollowing out in the armpits. If you need to drop down to your knees, that's totally okay here, and then you can come back up after a couple breaths. In the abs, I want you to feel the abdomen, the belly button, pulling in toward the spine and up toward the chin. Now this is what we call Mula Bandha. You are activating a very, very subtle muscle and energetic spot in the internal body to help you support the whole center, the whole torso and abdomen. Now finally, the last piece is to press through the balls of your feet. Really press out. And I need to bring my knees down here because I've been in plank for a long time, but you'll be pressing out through the feet, almost like you're pressing into a wall behind you. That's going to activate your leg muscles. And even though your legs are up in the air in a handstand, it's totally important that they're completely engaged, because that will help you have control. So, knees to the ground, take a deep breath here. We'll come up to plank one more time, press back through the feet. Pull the chest slightly forward so that the shoulders stack over the wrists. Weight in the palms. Armpits hollow out, belly button up and in, press back through the feet. 2 deep breaths here. Feel the engagement in this plank pose. You're working the abs, but you're also preparing yourself for a handstand. All right, come down to your knees. You can come back to child's pose for a moment, take a couple breaths. Rest your shoulders. Maybe circle out the wrists. A common complaint when practicing handstands is that people can't do it because their wrists hurt, and that's just kind of a side effect of practicing handstands. Your wrists are definitely going to hurt because you're putting a lot of weight on them. You're not necessarily doing anything wrong. Most people have really sore wrists, so if you want to do some wrist stretches throughout your practice, that's all right. If you're feeling severe pain, you'll want to stop, but if it's sore, just uncomfortable, know that that's really common and that it's something that you learn to work through. All right, so now we're going to come into mountain pose. Now, mountain pose, your arms are up overhead. So stand with your feet about hip distance apart, maybe a little bit closer together. You'll find a balance between the 4 points in your feet. That's right underneath the big toe, right underneath the pinky toe, and if you were to draw a line straight back to the heel from each of those spots, that's the 4 corners of your feet. So engage those points, press them down to the mat, lift your toes up. That's going to engage the legs. Feel how your legs are really working. You might pull the kneecaps up slightly and feel the inner thighs roll in towards each other. Now you'll tuck your tailbone down to pull your chest up. Your belly button pulls back toward the spine and in. Engage the Mula Bandha. Feel like you're pulling the perineum up. So women, feel like you're trying to stop the flow of pee, Kegel exercises. That's the feeling you're going for internally. So you've got this really, really strong foundation in the torso. Now you're going to bring your arms up overhead, pull the pinkies in towards each other, and still feel that hollowing out. Spread the fingers wide, spread across the chest, and feel how this is a really, really engaged mountain pose. This is handstand inverted, right? So our feet are on the ground rather than our hands. But the body is completely engaged. We're using a lot of muscles, and we are building the strength and the foundation that we need in handstand and feeling what it's like on our feet to go into a full handstand. All right, hands come down. So now if you're close to a wall, situate your mat so that it's up against the wall. This short end will go all the way up, and your hands will come about a foot away from the wall. Hands are about shoulder distance apart. So I'm going to show you first what I often see when people start practicing handstand, and this is what not to do, but what is very, very common. So what I see most people do is they'll come into a downward facing dog to start, and then maybe start to walk their feet forward, lift one leg up, and then they'll start to flail. They'll forget about all the foundational strength that's required in the arms and the legs and the armpits, and they'll kick up and they'll start doing something like this. And it looks funny, but you've probably done it before. And for some reason, the moment that you get 2 feet up off the ground, people just kind of go nuts and lose all control. And you might be able to get into a handstand that way, but most likely you're not going to be able to control your body. And ultimately, most of the practice of yoga, at least by my interpretation and how I believe yoga should be practiced, is it's about controlling the body, controlling the physical body, controlling the emotional body, controlling the mental body. So flailing is not controlled at all. It's actually an indicator of fear, and it means that you've lost all the foundation and all the strength in your body. So it's not really going to help you build a really solid foundation for a handstand practice. Instead, we'll have everyone come into downward facing dog, and I'll go through this in levels. So at any point, you can stay at a level and you don't have to continue on. If you're building foundation, then that's what I want you to do. So in your downward facing dog gaze, in between your hands, start to walk forward so that your shoulders come over your wrists. Then lift one leg up. Now, press down into your palms, hollow out the armpits, pull your belly button up and in, and start to press through the legs. I'm going to ask you to kick the right leg up toward the wall, but the whole time I want your left left leg to stay straight and engaged. So start with little hops. And see how when I hopped, this left leg stayed completely straight. Hop up. And what we're doing when we hop eventually is try to get your hips stacked over your shoulders. Now the wall is right here, so you're not going to fall over backwards. So if you hop a little bit, and then a little bit more, you might be able to hit the wall. Now be careful, you don't want to slam into the wall, we don't want to put any holes in the wall. So use your abs to control. Keep that leg straight. Hop up. And then maybe you rest your heels on the ground and feel what it's like for a moment to stack the shoulders over the wrists. The gaze is always forward. If you look back, you'll fall down. And then bring your feet down. Come into a child's pose. Take a couple breaths. Pat yourself on the back because you're doing an amazing job. Come into a downward facing dog. Walk the feet forward so that you stack your shoulders over your wrists. This time your left leg will come up. Right leg is straight. Hollow out the armpits. Strengthen the core. Maybe you stay here and just practice this. Maybe you start to hop. Keep the right leg straight. And hop again. And again. And even if you're just doing this, you'll find that it's kind of a workout. You might be a little bit out of breath. You're using a lot of strength and a lot of muscles here. You're even working your heart. Then maybe you start to hop a little bit more. Use your core and your abdomen to pull your hips over your shoulders. You hop up. You might find that one side is easier for you than the other. For me, my right side is better than my left. And maybe you bring your heels to the wall. Feel what it's like to float. Then maybe take one foot up off the wall, maybe take the other foot, play with that. When you're ready, come down. Child's pose. Take a few deep breaths. And that is a handstand practice. These are the foundations that you build to develop a consistent handstand practice over time. These are the things that you do at home after your class. These are the types of things you can do during a class when a yoga teacher says, okay, now we're going to work on an inversion of your choice. Pull your mat over to the wall and just start going through that sequence that we just went through. Practice on your hops. Practice keeping your legs straight. And maybe you're just practicing a plank and feeling what it's like to have your shoulders over your wrists. Maybe you're just practicing with your feet up on the wall and seeing what it feels like to have your hips stacked over your shoulders. Use your yoga teachers, use your friends, have them help you. Be really safe with this practice. You might not always feel comfortable, but you want to feel safe. Build the strength from the foundation up, and eventually you'll be able to hold a handstand. And I'll do one for you here. I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to hold one today. Practice for 5 or 10 minutes every day. Don't fatigue yourself because you will get tired and you'll notice that you won't have the strength to continue practicing. But for the sake of practicing a handstand, seeing what it's like to hold one all the way up, we'll see if I can hold one today. Almost there. And then you fall over, out of the frame. You laugh at yourself, you get back up, you try again. So, this has been your handstand practice. Don't get frustrated. Try not to become overwhelmed. There's no problem with starting from the very beginning and working your way up. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I can't wait to see you on or off the mat again soon. My name is Ashley Josephine Hertzberger. Thanks for spending some time with me today on the yoga mat. Namaste.